Imagine you're sitting across from someone who just bet their entire life savings on a coin flip. Their house, their family's future, everything. And they know the coin is rigged against them. You'd think they're insane, right? Now imagine that person is an entire nation. And the bet isn't money. It's 3 million lives. Welcome to December 7th, 1941, the day Japan attacked America knowing they would lose. The question that haunts history isn't whether they attacked, it's why. Because the answer reveals the most catastrophic miscalculation in modern warfare. Summer 1941, Tokyo. Japanese military commanders sit in a conference room staring at charts that spell their doom. The numbers are brutal. Japan has been fighting in China for 4 years. A grinding war consuming resources they don't have. Oil, steel, rubber, the lifeblood of modern warfare, and Japan's islands have almost none of it. Here's the insane part. 80% of Japan's oil comes from the country they're about to attack. America. Every Japanese warship runs on American fuel. Every tank uses American steel. Every military vehicle needs American rubber. The empire conquering Asia is completely dependent on American resources to survive. But that's about to end. Because Americans are reading newspaper reports from China. The rape of Nanking. Entire cities massacred. Hundreds of thousands of civilians dead. The brutality is shocking the world. American public opinion is turning hard against Japan. President Roosevelt faces mounting pressure to do something. But Roosevelt has a massive problem. Europe is burning. Hitler has conquered France, Belgium, Holland, Poland. Britain stands alone, being bombed night after night. America is already sending weapons and supplies across the Atlantic. The last thing Roosevelt wants is a second war in the Pacific. So he tries economic pressure instead of military force. July 1941, the hammer falls, total oil embargo. America cuts Japan off completely. No more petroleum, no more scrap metal, no more steel. Britain joins in. The Dutch East Indies join in. Overnight, Japan loses 90% of their oil supply. Japanese military planners do the math. They have 18 months of reserves. 18 months before the Imperial Navy can't sail. Before the Air Force can't fly. Before tanks sit empty in China. 18 months before everything collapses. The clock starts ticking. The Japanese government faces two options. Both are terrible. Option 1, surrender. Accept American demands, withdraw from China. Abandon the empire they've spent 4 years building. Accept international humiliation. Admit that thousands of Japanese soldiers died for nothing. Watch their dream of being a great power evaporate. Or option 2, find new oil sources. And there's only one place in the Pacific with enough. The Dutch East Indies, modern Indonesia, massive oil fields, enough petroleum to keep Japan's military running for years. But there's a catch. The Dutch East Indies sits under the protection of British and American naval power. Taking those oil fields means war with the two most powerful empires on Earth. So Japan's choice becomes clear. Surrender and collapse slowly over 18 months. Or attack now while they still have resources and hope for a miracle. Time is not on their side. Every day they wait, their oil reserves drop. Their strategic position weakens. Their window closes. The military leadership reaches a conclusion. If war is inevitable, better to start it on their terms. Strike first. Strike hard. Strike before America can mobilize. But one massive obstacle stands in the way. The United States Pacific Fleet. 8 battleships sitting at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyers. The most powerful naval force in the Pacific. If Japan moves south to take those oil fields, the Pacific Fleet will cut their supply lines and destroy their invasion force. Pearl Harbor has to be neutralized first. That's not optional, that's mathematical. Enter Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, brilliant, experienced, and absolutely terrified of what's coming. Because Yamamoto has a secret that most Japanese military leaders don't share. He's actually been to America. He studied at Harvard, served as a naval officer in Washington, traveled across the United States visiting factories and industrial centers. He's walked through the automobile plants in Detroit where they produce cars faster than Japan produces bullets. He's seen the oil fields of Texas that make Japan's entire petroleum supply look like a puddle. He's witnessed American industrial capacity with his own eyes, and the numbers haunt him. America produces 5 times more steel than Japan, 10 times more oil, 17 times more coal. The American economy is 10 times larger than Japan's entire GDP. In a prolonged war, there's no contest. America will build more ships, more planes, more tanks than Japan can even count. Yamamoto knows this with absolute certainty. He writes a letter to a Japanese politician that becomes famous. If ordered to fight, I can run wild for 6 months to a year. After that, I have absolutely no confidence. Read that again. The man planning Pearl Harbor is telling his own government he has no confidence they can win. So why is he planning the attack? Because Yamamoto isn't trying to win a long war. He's trying to avoid one. Here's Yamamoto's logic. It's brilliant, it's calculated, and it's completely wrong. Japan can't defeat America in a prolonged conflict. That's mathematically impossible. But Japan doesn't need to defeat America. They just need America to decide fighting isn't worth it. One devastating surprise attack destroys the Pacific Fleet. Japan rapidly seizes the Dutch East Indies, Philippines, Malaya, Burma. They establish a defensive perimeter of fortified islands across the Pacific. By the time America rebuilds their navy, Japan controls all the resources they need. And now America faces a choice. Spend years and countless lives fighting across thousands of miles of ocean to break through that defense. Or negotiate peace and let Japan keep their empire. Yamamoto is betting America chooses negotiation. Because Americans are rational, right? They'll calculate the costs. They'll see that victory would require years of brutal warfare. Thousands of dead soldiers, billions in expenses, all to reconquer territories most Americans have never heard of. Rational people would negotiate. That's the plan. That's the gamble. But this entire strategy rests on one assumption: that America will react rationally to cost-benefit analysis. And this is where Japan makes their catastrophic mistake. They fundamentally misunderstand American psychology. Japanese military leaders look at America and see weakness. They see a democracy torn by political debates, a population that seems soft, focused on movies and cars and comfort, a country that turned isolationist after World War I and wants nothing to do with foreign wars. Even in 1941, most Americans oppose entering the war despite Europe burning. The Japanese High Command thinks Americans won't endure a long Pacific War. They don't have Japanese warrior spirit. They don't have Bushido, the code that makes Japanese soldiers fight to the death rather than surrender. Americans are individualistic, soft, hit them hard enough and they'll negotiate rather than sacrifice. Japan even has historical precedent. In 1905, they fought the Russian Empire. Russia had more troops, more resources, more everything. But Japanese fighting spirit was so fierce that Russia eventually gave up. They negotiated peace rather than continue a costly war thousands of miles from Moscow. Why can't the same thing work with America? But Japanese leaders missed something critical about American culture. There's a pattern in American history that Japan didn't understand. Americans avoid wars when possible. They prefer isolation. They don't want foreign entanglements. But the moment you attack Americans directly, the moment you kill them on what they consider their territory, everything changes. The response isn't rational. It's not a cost-benefit calculation. It's visceral, it's emotional, it's rage. There's a phrase in American culture, "Don't tread on me." It means don't attack us first. Because if you do, we won't ask if fighting back is worth it. We'll mobilize everything we have, and we won't stop until you're completely defeated. Japan is about to learn this lesson in the most devastating way imaginable. November 1941. Emperor Hirohito makes the final decision. Attack. The date is set for December 8th, Tokyo time. December 7th across the international date line in Hawaii. 6 aircraft carriers steam toward Pearl Harbor in complete radio silence. Over 300 aircraft are ready to launch. Pilots have trained for months. Special torpedoes designed for shallow water. Routes planned to avoid detection. Attack timed for Sunday morning when the fleet is in port and crews are relaxed. The plan is tactically perfect. Hit the battleships first. Destroy America's main naval power. Then hit the aircraft carriers if they're in port. Then destroy infrastructure, fuel storage, repair facilities, dry docks, make Pearl Harbor unusable for months. By the time America recovers, Japan will control Southeast Asia. The defensive perimeter will be established. America will face the cost of breaking through and choose negotiation instead. That's the theory. But even now, Yamamoto has doubts. He's seen too much of America, spent too much time there, met too many Americans. He suspects they might not react the way Tokyo expects. But he's a military officer. His job is to execute the strategy his government chooses. And the decision is made. The attack force is already at sea. December 7th is coming. December 7th, 1941, 7 a.m. Hawaii time. Pearl Harbor is beautiful, clear blue skies, gentle tropical breeze. 8 battleships sit peacefully on Battleship Row. USS Arizona, USS Oklahoma, USS California, USS West Virginia, floating fortresses of American naval power. Sailors are waking up, some having breakfast. Others still sleeping. It's Sunday morning, a day of rest. At 7:48 a.m., the first Japanese bombs fall. Within 2 hours, the harbor becomes hell. Arizona explodes when a bomb hits her ammunition magazines. Over 1,000 men dead in seconds. Oklahoma takes 5 torpedoes and capsizes, trapping hundreds inside the overturned hull. West Virginia sinks at her moorings. California floods and settles to the bottom. Nevada tries to escape, but has to beach herself to avoid blocking the harbor entrance. By 10 a.m., it's over. 8 battleships sunk or damaged. Nearly 200 aircraft destroyed on the ground. Over 2,000 Americans dead. Another 1,000 wounded. The U.S. Pacific Fleet is crippled. From a military standpoint, Yamamoto's plan worked almost perfectly. Japan achieved total surprise, lost only 29 aircraft, accomplished their objectives. The Pacific Fleet won't interfere with Japanese expansion for months. There's just one problem. America's aircraft carriers weren't in port. They escaped, and carriers will prove far more important than battleships in the coming war. But even that's not the real problem. The real problem is something Japan can't see, can't bomb, can't torpedo: American psychology. 1:30 p.m. Washington time. President Roosevelt receives confirmation of the attack. And in that moment, every calculation Japan made about America is proven wrong. There's no debate about responding. No cost-benefit analysis. No discussion of whether the Pacific is worth fighting for. No consideration of negotiation. Roosevelt immediately begins drafting a war declaration. Congress will vote the next day, but the decision is already made. America isn't going to negotiate. America isn't going to accept a limited defeat. America isn't going to let Japan keep their empire in exchange for peace. America is going to fight, total war, complete mobilization. And they won't stop until Japan is utterly defeated. Every assumption Japan made was wrong. Every calculation about American will was incorrect. Every belief about American softness was fantasy. Admiral Yamamoto, when he hears the attack succeeded, doesn't celebrate. His officers are jubilant. They crippled the Pacific Fleet. They achieved surprise, but Yamamoto knows what's coming. He reportedly says, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." Whether those exact words were spoken, historians debate, but the sentiment was accurate. Japan just made the worst strategic mistake of the 20th century. They attacked America believing it would lead to negotiations. Instead, they guaranteed total war, a war they cannot win, a war that will end with atomic fire over their cities, a war that will destroy their empire and nearly destroy their nation. All because they misunderstood one simple truth about American psychology. So why did Japan attack America knowing they'd lose? Because they didn't believe they'd lose. They believed they could win quickly. They believed America would negotiate. They believed their warrior spirit could overcome American industrial power. Every single belief was catastrophically wrong. Over the next 4 years, Japan would pay for that miscalculation. Island-hopping campaigns, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, firebombing of Tokyo, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, total defeat, unconditional surrender. All of it started with Pearl Harbor. All of it could have been avoided if Japan understood one truth. If you attack America directly, if you kill Americans on their territory, they won't calculate whether fighting back is worth it. They'll just fight with everything they have until you're defeated. Yamamoto knew this. He warned his government. They didn't listen. And that's the real tragedy of Pearl Harbor. It wasn't just a military miscalculation. It was a failure to understand human nature. A failure to understand that some things matter more than rational strategy. Pride, honor, revenge. Japan gambled that America would be rational. They were wrong, and that mistake changed world history forever. The next video covers what happened during those 2 hours at Pearl Harbor in complete detail. Minute by minute, ship by ship, the chaos, the heroism, the critical mistakes Japan made during the attack itself that would cost them the war. That story drops in 48 hours. Until then, remember, the biggest battles aren't always won with guns and ships. Sometimes they're won or lost in the minds of people making decisions. Japan made their choice at Pearl Harbor. America made theirs in response. Everything that followed was just consequences.